The heaviest things I've ever held were the 50 envelopes in my hand. They were thick, cream-colored cardstock, the kind you use for a wedding. The edges were sealed with a circle of gold foil, shiny and perfect under the porch light. It looked like a celebration. It was. It was the end of a war nobody knew I had been fighting. I stood on the wraparound porch of my new house, a home I had bled for, and my hands trembled. Not from cold, but from the weight of one sentence printed in neat black script inside each of them. A sentence that had taken me 9 years to write. You are invited to a housewarming party. No family allowed. Before we dive into this, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? My name is Megan Whitfield. I am 31 years old. For most of my life, I was the family's ghost, the person they looked through, not at. For 9 years, I was nothing to them at all. I lived in a silence so deep I sometimes forgot the sound of my own last name. They thought I had disappeared. They thought I had failed. They probably hoped I had. They were wrong. I didn't just survive the silence. I built a life inside it. This house, this porch, the newly mown grass smelling sweet in the evening air. This was my answer to every insult, every sneer, every time they made me feel small. And tonight, by sending these invitations, I was finally turning on the lights and showing them what I had built in the dark. The one rule on the card wasn't just a rule. It was a statement. It was a locked door. It was the first time in my life I had ever set a boundary, and it felt like both a whisper and a scream. To understand the silence, you have to understand the noise that came before it. My family's love was a currency, and I was perpetually broke. My sister, Denise, was the millionaire. She was 2 years younger, but in our family's eyes, she was a lifetime ahead. Family dinners were my personal trial. They were always held at my parents' house, a place with beige walls and thick carpets that seemed to absorb all the happiness but none of the tension. The air was always thick with the smell of my mother's roast chicken and my father's disappointment in me. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 22. I had just finished my associate's degree at a community college. I was proud. It was a step. I was working part-time at a diner to pay for it, and I felt like I was finally moving forward. Denise, on the other hand, was in her sophomore year at a prestigious university, the one my dad had always dreamed of attending. We were all sitting around the polished mahogany table. The good china was out. My father carved the turkey, making a grand show of it, as he always did. "So, Megan," he started, not looking at me but at the bird he was dismantling. "Still slinging hash at that greasy spoon?" I felt the familiar heat rise in my cheeks. "It's called a restaurant, Dad, and it's paying my bills." My mother chimed in with her usual placating tone. "Now, Bill, be nice. She's trying." Trying was the word they always used for me. It wasn't a compliment. It was a consolation prize. Denise, seated opposite me, gave a delicate little laugh. It was a sound that was both airy and sharp, like broken glass. "Oh, Mom, let Dad have his fun. I think it's sweet that Megan has a little job. It must be so grounding." She looked at her fiancé, a blandly handsome man named Mark, and he smirked in agreement. The word sweet from Denise's mouth was poison. It meant pathetic. My father pointed the carving knife at me. "Grounding? She's stuck in the mud. Your sister is getting straight A's. She's on the dean's list and she's already getting internship offers from major firms. You're serving coffee to truck drivers." "There's nothing wrong with that," I said, my voice small. "There's nothing right with it either," he shot back. "We didn't raise you to be average, Megan." But they did. They had raised me to be the backdrop for Denise's brilliance. Every one of her achievements was a spotlight, and I was just the shadow it cast. When she got engaged, my mother spent a month planning the announcement party. When I got my degree, my mother said, "Oh, that's nice, dear," on the phone before asking what Denise wanted for her birthday. I bought them Christmas presents with the money from my tips. One year, I saved for months to buy my mother a cashmere scarf. It wasn't the most expensive one in the store, but it was soft and a beautiful shade of blue. She opened it, smiled thinly, and said, "Thank you, Megan." Later, I saw her showing off the diamond earrings Denise and Mark had given her to our aunt. My scarf was back in its box, tucked under a pile of discarded wrapping paper. Denise noticed. She always noticed. She walked over to me later, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Nice try with the scarf," she murmured, her voice dripping with condescension. "But you can't compete with real money, Meg. You should just stick to what you're good at." "And what's that?" I asked, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. She smiled, a perfect, predatory flash of white teeth. "Staying quiet." That was the recurring theme. My opinions were cute. My accomplishments were nice tries. My life was a footnote in the grand story of the Whitfield family, starring the beautiful and successful Denise. My parents weren't just bystanders. They were the producers. They loved the show. And I was the designated failure, the one they could point to, so Denise's light would seem even brighter. The breaking point didn't come with a crash of thunder. It was a quiet snap. It happened at Denise's engagement party, a lavish affair held at a country club I couldn't afford to be a member of. I wore the nicest dress I owned, a simple black sheath dress I'd bought on clearance. I felt like a crow in a flock of peacocks. Denise was radiant in a white dress that probably cost more than my car. I had been saving money. Not a lot, but for me, it was a fortune. I had a few $1,000s tucked away, the beginning of a dream to maybe, one day, transfer to a 4-year university and get a business degree. I wanted to show them I could be more than a waitress. I wanted to be a part of the family, to contribute. The party was in full swing. My father was holding court, telling some loud story to a group of his friends, gesturing with his Scotch glass. My mother was fluttering around, making sure everyone was happy. I was standing near the caterer's table, trying to look like I belonged. I saw my dad talking to the event manager. He looked stressed. I overheard a snippet of conversation about the bar tab being higher than expected. An idea sparked in my mind. A stupid, hopeful idea. This was my chance. I could help. I could be a part of this. I walked over to my father after the manager had left. I took a deep breath. "Dad," I said, my voice a little shaky, "I heard you talking about the bill. I've been saving some money. I'd like to help. I can contribute. I want to." I was offering him everything I had. He turned to look at me, and his expression wasn't grateful. It wasn't even kind. It was a look of pure, unadulterated dismissal. He let out a short, harsh laugh. Several of his friends turned to look at us. "You," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "What are you going to do? Pay for the cocktail napkins with your tip money?" The heat flooded my entire body. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me. "No, I have savings," I insisted, my voice pleading. "I can really help." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low, venomous growl. "Listen to me. You don't have the right to contribute to this. You contribute nothing to this family. Nothing to its name, nothing to its reputation. You are a guest here, Megan. That's all. Now go get a drink and stop embarrassing me." I stood there, frozen, my world, which had been cracked for years, finally shattered. I looked past him, searching for my mother. She was standing a few feet away, arranging pastries on a tray. She had heard every word. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, she did the one thing that broke me completely. She looked away. She picked up a tiny fork and straightened a napkin, pretending she was in another world. Then I heard it. Denise's laugh. That same light, cruel sound. She was standing with Mark, watching the whole scene. She was openly, gleefully laughing at my humiliation. That was it. The snap. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A strange, cold calm washed over me. I turned without another word and walked through the crowd. People parted for me. their faces a blur of curiosity and pity. I walked out of the ballroom, through the grand lobby, and out the front doors into the cold night air. The valet asked if he should get my car. I shook my head. I left it there. I left the keys on the front seat. I left my coat on the chair inside. I walked down the long, manicured driveway of the country club, my thin dress doing nothing to protect me from the wind. I just walked. I walked until the sounds of the party faded. I walked until my feet ached, and with every step, I made a promise. I would never go back. I would never ask for their approval again. I would disappear. I would become the ghost they always treated me as. That night, I didn't just leave a party. I left my entire life behind. The first year was the hardest. The silence was a physical presence, an ache in my chest. I moved to a different city a few hours away, a place where no one knew my name. I got a small, bleak apartment with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. For the first few weeks, my phone would buzz. My mother left voicemails, her voice a mix of confusion and irritation. "Megan, where are you? You're being dramatic. Call me." My father didn't call. Denise sent one text. "Mom is freaking out. You really made a scene. Congrats." I read it, and then I blocked all of their numbers. I changed my own number a week later. The silence was now complete. Loneliness was a constant companion. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, mourning a family that was still alive. But every morning, I got up. I went to my new waitressing job at a different diner in a different city. I smiled at customers, I poured coffee, and I saved every single dollar I could. My life became a study in discipline, toll. I lived on ramen noodles and cheap bread. I bought my clothes at thrift stores. My one luxury was books from the library. I stopped thinking in terms of days or weeks and started thinking in terms of goals. My first goal, get a better job. I used my associate's degree to get a position as a receptionist at a small real estate office. It was boring, mind-numbing work, but it was a desk. It was a step up. I listened, I learned. I watched how the agents talked, how they closed deals, how they managed their finances. My second goal, go back to school. I enrolled in night classes at the local university, studying business and finance. My days were for work, my nights were for study. I was perpetually exhausted. There were so many times I wanted to quit, to just give up and accept the life my father said I was destined for. But then I would remember his face at the party, the sneer, the dismissal, and I would remember my mother looking away. That memory was a fire that kept me warm on the coldest nights. It was fuel. Anger can be a powerful motivator. Years passed. The sharp edges of my pain began to dull, replaced by a quiet, fierce determination. I finished my degree, graduating with honors. I used my knowledge and my experience at the real estate office to get a job as a junior analyst at a commercial real estate development firm. I was good at it. I was meticulous, I was focused, and I was hungry. I didn't have a social life to distract me. I didn't have family drama to drain my energy. All of my focus, all of my power went into my work. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. My bosses noticed. Promotions came. First to analyst, then senior analyst, then associate developer. My tiny apartment was replaced by a nicer one. I could afford to buy new clothes. I could order takeout without feeling guilty. Every dollar I earned, every step I took up the ladder, felt like a brick I was laying. I was building a wall between me and my past, a fortress of my own making. I never spoke of my family. When coworkers asked, I would give a vague, simple answer. We're not close. It was the truth in its own way. We weren't close. We were on different planets. After 7 years of grinding, a huge opportunity came up. My firm was acquiring a portfolio of properties, and they were offering ownership shares to senior employees who invested in the project. It was a risk. It meant taking every penny I had saved, my emergency fund, my retirement savings, everything, and betting it all on this deal. I spent a week poring over the numbers, barely sleeping, It was terrifying, but it was also the chance I had been working for. A chance to not just earn a salary, but to build real, lasting wealth. A chance to be truly independent. I thought about my father's words. You contribute nothing. I signed the papers. I invested everything. The next 2 years were a blur of stress and hard work. But the deal was a success, a massive success. My investment paid off tenfold. At the age of 30, 9 years after I had walked out of that country club with nothing, I was finally, unequivocally, secure. I was more than secure. I was successful. And the first thing I did was buy a house. Not just any house. I spent months looking for it. It had to be perfect. I found it in a quiet suburban neighborhood with old trees and wide lawns. It was a beautiful 2-story home with pale blue siding and a wide, welcoming wraparound porch. It had a fireplace and a big kitchen with a sunny breakfast nook. It was a home, not just a house. It was everything my childhood home wasn't. Warm, open, and mine. I signed the papers, and the pen didn't shake. I walked through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors, and I smiled. I thought of them. I wondered what they would think if they could see me now. And a new idea began to form. A final brick to place in my wall. A final word in a 9-year-long silent conversation. The plan was simple. I would throw a housewarming party. I would invite everyone who had become a part of my new life. My colleagues from work, the few close friends I had made over the years, my new neighbors. I would celebrate the life I had built, and I would make sure my family knew about it. I didn't send them an invitation, of course. That would have defeated the purpose. Instead, I sent one to a distant cousin, Sarah, who I knew was the family's biggest gossip. I knew that within an hour of her receiving the card, the entire Whitfield clan would know. I stood at my new mailbox, the 50 envelopes in my hand, and sent my quiet declaration out into the world. It took less than a day. Sarah called my Aunt Carol, who called my mother. Word spread like wildfire. A friend from my old life, someone I hadn't spoken to in years but had reconnected with on social media, sent me a text. Hey Meg, this is random, but your mom just called my mom in a total panic. Did you really buy a house? And are you really throwing a party that your family isn't allowed to go to? I smiled as I typed back. Yes to both. My friend's reply was a string of shocked emojis. The panic I had caused was a distant echo, but it was satisfying. For years, their judgment had been the loudest noise in my life. Now, my silence was deafening to them. That simple, stark line, no family allowed, was a public rejection. It was me, finally taking the narrative back. I wasn't the failure they had cast me out as. I was the success story they weren't allowed to be a part of. Their reactions, as told to me through the gossip pipeline, were exactly what I expected. Denise was apoplectic. She apparently stormed over to my parents' house, waving her phone around. She's mocking us in front of everyone. After everything we did for her, she does this. She can't do this to us. Everything we did for her. The delusion was almost funny. My father, predictably, reacted with bitter pride. His version, relayed to my uncle, was, she thinks she's too good for us now. She gets a little bit of money, and suddenly she forgets who raised her. It's disgusting, ungrateful. Ungrateful. That had always been their favorite word for me. I was ungrateful for not appreciating their constant criticism. I was ungrateful for not being a carbon copy of my perfect sister. I was ungrateful for wanting to be seen as a person with her own worth. My mother was the only one who tried to break the silence. A new number popped up on my phone with a text message. Megan, it's Mom. I don't know why you're doing this. This isn't you. We're your family. Please, just call me. We miss you. I stared at the message for a long time. We miss you. 9 years. 9 years of birthdays, holidays, and Christmases had gone by without a single card, a single attempt to find me, a single word. They hadn't missed me. They had forgotten me. They didn't miss me. They missed the idea of me, the quiet, compliant girl who knew her place. They missed their punching bag. Her message wasn't an apology, it was a demand. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking me to erase the past and pretend it never happened, to come back and play my part. I deleted the message without replying. I blocked the number. Their anger, their confusion, their outrage. It didn't cause me pain anymore. It only fueled my peace. Every frantic call they made to a relative, every angry text they sent, only confirmed that I had done the right thing. I had taken away their power. They could no longer define me because they were no longer a part of my world. They were just noise on the other side of a very thick, very strong wall. The night of the party arrived. It was a cool evening in early autumn. I had strung fairy lights all over the wraparound porch. Inside, the house was filled with warmth and light. Guests started to arrive, bringing bottles of wine and housewarming gifts. My co-workers, who had seen me work so hard for so long, toasted my success. My friends, the small, loyal circle I had built, hugged me and told me how proud they were. My new neighbors introduced themselves, welcoming me to the street. The house buzzed with life. Laughter echoed in the kitchen. Music floated from the speakers I'd set up in the living room. People mingled on the back deck, admiring the garden. I moved through the rooms, a glass of wine in my hand, and for the first time in my entire adult life, I felt completely and utterly safe. I felt at home. This space was mine. The people here were here for me. They saw me, not a shadow or a disappointment. I was standing by the fireplace talking to my boss when one of my friends, Jessica, came up to me. She had a strange look on her face. "Meg," she whispered, pulling me aside. "Don't freak out, but you need to know something. There's a car parked across the street. It's been there for about 20 minutes. The lights are off." My heart gave a single, hard thump. I knew instantly who it was. "What kind of car?" I asked, my voice steady. "A dark blue sedan, a Lexus, I think." "My father's car." Jessica squeezed my arm. "What do you want to do? I can ask my husband to go out there and tell them to leave." I shook my head. "No, don't do anything. Just let them be." She looked at me, confused. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said, and I meant it. I walked to the large picture window in my living room. It looked out onto the front lawn and the street beyond. Peeking through the curtains, I could see it, the dark silhouette of my father's car, parked just beyond the reach of my porch light. I couldn't see them inside, but I could feel them. I could feel their eyes on my house, on the warm light spilling from the windows, on the shadows of people laughing and dancing inside. They were sitting out there in the dark, in the cold, uninvited. They were on the outside, looking in at a life they had no part in. A life they had told me I would never have. A part of me, the old Megan, the scared little girl, wanted to run and hide. Another, angrier part of me wanted to march out there, to fling the door open and scream at them, to ask them how it felt to be the ones left out. But I did neither. I just stood there for a moment, watching, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even triumph, just a quiet, profound sense of peace. My revenge wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't a screaming match on the front lawn. My revenge was the party they couldn't get into. My revenge was the sound of my friends' laughter. My revenge was the warmth of the fireplace on my back. My revenge was me, turning away from the window and walking back to the people who cared about me. I didn't go outside. I didn't yell or fight or cry. I let them sit there, staring at the life I had built without them, without their money, without their approval, and most importantly, without their love. My rule, no family allowed, was never about spite. It was about protection. It was about creating a sanctuary for myself where their judgment couldn't reach me. By coming here, by sitting out there in the dark, they had proven why that rule was so necessary. They hadn't come to apologize. They had come to see, to witness. Maybe they had hoped to find me living in a dump, to confirm their narrative that I was nothing without them. Maybe they had come to crash the party, to force their way back into my life. But they just sat there, powerless. In their silence outside my house, I finally understood the power of my own. My 9 years of silence hadn't been an absence, it had been a period of creation. I had reclaimed my worth not by fighting them, but by building a life so full and so happy that their opinions simply became irrelevant. They were ghosts from a past that no longer had any hold on me. For years, I begged for their love. I contorted myself into shapes I thought they would approve of. I shrank myself to make them feel big. I quieted my own voice so I could hear their praise, which never came. I thought their love was the sun, and I would die without it. Now I know I was wrong. Their love wasn't the sun. It was a cage. My silence was my escape. My hard work was my rebellion. And this house, this life, this peace, this is my victory. I didn't need to defeat them. I just needed to free myself. If you have ever been made to feel small by the people who are supposed to build you up, if you have ever been shut out by your own family, please remember this. You can build your own home. It might not have a wraparound porch or a fireplace. It might be a tiny apartment, or a friendship, or a career you love. A home is just a safe space to be yourself. You have the power to build it brick by brick. The most important rule for that home is that you get to decide who gets an invitation. You get to decide who is allowed inside. Thank you for listening to my story. My name is Megan Whitfield, and I am finally home. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you, so please share your own story in the comments. Let me know. Where are you watching from?